Hello there, my name is Japheth Mast, and welcome to the Make Life Awesome podcast. I'm the Ex-Amish photographer with the funny name and the crazy hair, but trust me, there's a whole lot more to me than just that. In this podcast, I really hope to show you my heart more than what's in my head, because that's where all the really beautiful stuff is. I'm so glad you're here. Let's jump in to learning together what it looks like to make life awesome. Here we are.
Yeah.
Maybe. Are we starting? Yeah, we're starting. We're starting. Hello.
Hello, Mary-Ruths. Say hi.
Hi, everyone.
I'm here today with my good friend Mary-Ruth Neal. Excited to have you on. It's going to be good. Have you ever been on a podcast before?
I have not.
He has not. Awesome. Beautiful. Well, we're just going to dive right in. Do you want to share a little bit of who you are, give some context for where you've come from, where you're at right now?
So I was born and raised in Louisiana, in New Orleans, and then right outside of there. Went to LSU for college and then started teaching. Backing up a little bit, so I was born and raised in a Christian home, things like that. In college, kind of walked away from God and things like that, but God found me. And so I taught for several years, high school and junior high, and then I ended up going to California, to Eureka, to do a ministry program for a year, but was really about actually, I jokingly called it rehab for the heart, because that's why I was going, was to actually deal with all of the pain that I had shoved down my entire life. So I had, been through a lot, and my way of dealing with things was just to bury it as deep as I could and work really hard and just stay busy and ignore everything. So yeah, during that year, I really started going after all of the pain I had shoved down, and emotional health really became a huge part of my life, and connecting with my heart. And I learned so much that year, but I continued to learn that even after that year. And yeah, so, just kind of continuing to go after my pain, connect with myself and my heart, and learn who I am. And yeah, then I eventually moved back to Austin, and then I came back to California, and now I live in Redding. And yeah.
You talked about pain from your childhood, and I think that often we tend to be a certain person when we're a kid, but then as we grow up, get into adulthood, we lose a lot of what made us a kid. We lose a lot of what made us tick and what makes us come alive. So can you share a little bit of, maybe give us a picture of you as a kid? What did you love to do? What made you happy? What made your heart come alive? And then the journey to rediscovering that in your later years.
Yeah, for sure. So as a kid, I was very, very outdoorsy. I was a little bit of a tomboy. Yeah, there were 3 girls and then a boy, and then there was my brother, and then there was me. So, I had my dolls, but I played with my brother a lot. So, I was always on my bike. I was outside building forts, jumping on the trampoline, just all the things. I would wake up and immediately just be outside. I did not want to come inside. Yeah, and thankfully I did have, a couple of friends who were, a little bit tomboyish themselves. So we would go fishing. We loved doing that. Water balloon fights, with the neighbors, neighborhood kids and stuff, and wars with that. And, next door neighbor had he made his own half pipe. So, I got it in a little bit into skateboarding for a little bit. Not enough to actually be good or anything, but, yeah, playing in the woods a lot. I spent a lot of time in the woods and in trees, climbing trees. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, yeah, building forts was probably building forts and riding my bike. Those were a massive part of my childhood. I probably spent more time on my bike than I did on solid ground. So, yeah. So that's what I was as a kid. And then my journey from there, as far as what happened from there and how things looked different for a while was, obviously, in childhood, hard things happen to you. And, so things happened in my childhood, but they also happened, in junior high and high school and even college as well. And so, probably like throughout high school and then college, I really shut down my heart, because, I couldn't deal with all of the pain, and so I honestly just lived my life by just being busy, and I worked a lot, because to me it was like, if you are, experiencing a lot of pain and you shut down your heart, you also shut down joy, and actually being able to have things that you do enjoy, and actually being able to have hobbies and things like that. And so I didn't really let myself enjoy anything, honestly, because I couldn't. I had like no capacity for that. And so throughout high school and college, I really didn't go outside very much. I obviously didn't ride my bike. I wasn't, I was working all the time. I didn't have time for that. That was like a luxury of people who didn't have to work. And so, yeah, I really shut that down. And then in college, I remember thinking like, oh, I'm not really outdoorsy. That's not really my thing, because I was always working, but I also started smoking cigarettes in college. And so like the lifestyle of people who are really outdoorsy felt really different from me. And I almost felt like a hypocrite of like, I can't actually enjoy outside and the outdoors because like I don't live a healthy lifestyle, almost like as if that disqualified me from enjoying nature. So yeah, I mean, I think the term kind of like being crunchy, kind of became popular around that time, and people were starting to be, like the natural, like, oh, I'm going to wear Patagonia and Chacos, and, I go hiking on the weekends, and all that stuff kind of became more popular around that time. Yeah. And I was like, yeah, I'm not like that. So if those are the kind of people who are hiking and doing things that are outside, then I guess that's not me. Like, I'm not one of those people. So yeah, that was how I was for a long time. And then whenever I came out to California and I did that year of ministry school, I definitely started to let myself feel the pain that I had been shoving down and start going there with, the really hard things. And as I did that, the other part of my heart actually woke up and came alive. And the part of your heart that's capable of having joy and actually enjoying things, and the creativity and the imagination and the wonder, all of that stuff that's like so part of your childhood started to like revive itself. And what came out of that was realizing like, oh, actually, I really am outdoorsy. I really love being outside. I don't actually have to have Chacos or wear Patagonia in order to, consider myself somebody who actually enjoys this. Like all of those things are just crazy disqualifiers. And I felt like, during that time, like God just kind of reminded me of like who I was as a kid, like, do you remember? Okay. So it's kind of cheesy, but like you've seen Lion King, and he's like there's that one scene where he's like, Simba, remember who you are. It was like, I genuinely had one of those moments with God where he was just kind of like reminding me of like who I am, like, remember who you are. And I just like saw myself like in the woods, running through the woods as a kid and playing on my, on my bike and fishing and all of these, like, it was like so much of my childhood. It was like almost as if I had forgotten it, if I had written it off. And I was like, whoa, actually, like, this is actually me. Like, that's me. That's who I am actually. And it was like, it gave me permission to like being reminded of who I was as a child. It gave me permission to to start embracing it more, because I felt like, oh no, this is actually my identity, or part of my identity. And like, this is part of who I am, and I'm allowed to enjoy this. I'm not just trying to be, I'm not just trying to fit in with the people who live here or trying to act like the people who are around here, like this is actually something that I really, really genuinely enjoy. And, so yeah, I started just like discovering really cool places around me and going outside. And I mean, I just loved it. Anytime that I was outside, I just felt like I connected to myself and my heart. And I felt like that childlike wonder would just ooze out of me, like so easily without having to try it was like, oh my gosh, look at that sunset. Like, wow, you know, and you just feel like so alive in those moments. And it wasn't like I had to like work something up or anything. It just came out of me. And so I always walked away feeling like, you know, that I connected with myself, that I connected to nature, that I connected to life, that I connected to God. And yeah, you know, to this day, I always say, you know, like I'm a better version of me when I've been outside, you know? So yeah, it's kind of part of the journey up to this point.
That's so fascinating. So it sounds like once you actually started going back and looking at the pain from your childhood, and going into that and finding healing and freedom from that, you actually like rediscovered this part of yourself that you kind of forgot about or lost or just shoved down because there was a pain associated with that part of your life or something like that. And then once you actually went on that journey of going back and finding healing from that pain, you rediscovered that and you're like, oh my gosh, I forgot that I used to love this thing. So how has this, rediscovering your love for nature, how has that helped you connect back to your heart? And how has that helped you come more fully alive?
Yeah, there's a couple different things. So like more recently this summer, I bought a kayak and I also invested in backpacking gear and I actually started going and doing that. And there's so many things I feel like that nature brings up and helps you to connect with your heart in different ways. Not necessarily always in terms of like going after pain, but in terms of like the things you learn about yourself and learn about your heart and like what it is that you need, or even things that scare you or things that you've like just realized about yourself. I feel like I get a lot of like self-revelation when I'm outside. So yeah, like one of the things that I realized like this summer specifically with backpacking and getting a kayak was kind of like how much I had limited myself and kind of put a ceiling on who I am and who I'm like allowed to be, you know, because there's part of my heart that's like super adventurous and like loves spontaneity and is like, you know, rah, like let's go. And then there's the other half of me that's like real cautious and like, I don't know, and I'm really unsure. So if you know anything about Enneagram, I'm a 6 wing 7, so then that would make sense. So 6s are really about support. They like really, like that's like their greatest fear is like being without support. Super hilarious because I remember reading that and being like, that's not me at all, but it is so me. So yeah, like I think a lot of my life I actually realized this summer, like throughout like actually the journey of getting the backpacking and like getting the kayak and stuff, like that I thought that I needed the support of either a friend or a guy or somebody in my life in order to kind of like go after the things that I really wanted, you know? And so growing up, I always wanted a way to actually get on the water and be on the water because I grew up in Louisiana and there's not a lot of public access to water. There is, but there isn't. There's no places you can like, at least around where I lived, where you can like rent a kayak or go paddle boarding or things like that. It's kind of like the only people who get to enjoy the outdoors are the people who have money, who have the boats and the things like that to get out there. And so growing up, I didn't have any of those things. So I always felt like, you know, I just want to be able to have access to this. I want to be able to enjoy this little piece of nature like myself whenever I want to. And so that's something that like I had been like dreaming about for a long time and even backpacking. But I had put it off, you know, for so long because, you know, like there was a lot of fear and being scared about doing that, you know, and I don't really know what I'm doing. And, you know, also being afraid, like, what if I think I'm going to like this and then I don't, you know? And so it was a lot of journey of like trusting myself, like, hey, you are kind of reminding myself actually, even like, hey, you are outdoorsy. You've been doing this for several years now. This is part of who you are. I seriously doubt you're going to suddenly decide that you don't like this. So you can go ahead and spend the money on it. And then also realizing like, me thinking that like I needed support from somebody else to do this, you know, was such a lie, because I realized like, oh wow, like I actually am really capable of doing things. And I actually, like I can tie a kayak down to my car. Like I know, like I can figure this out. Like I can figure out how to get this, kayak off of here and all that. And I definitely remember having this one moment when I was sitting like by the lake this summer, and I was just, kind of talking to myself and talking to God, and just realizing like, oh wow, like this doesn't just apply to this area of my life. It applies to a lot of areas, like traveling or things like that. Like just anything that I wanted to do that I've just been holding myself back on, waiting for somebody to come along and do it with me. And just kind of like this summer, I felt like I gave myself permission to like be brave, in a lot of areas, and just being like, you know what? I know that you like being able to tell my heart, like, hey, I know you want support. I know that you are scared about some things and that you want somebody to be here with you. But I've connected to my heart enough to be able to say actually to my own heart, hey, I'm with you. I'm not going anywhere. Like I'm good friends with my own heart, to where I can actually stay with myself through difficult things and be like, hey, I'm not going to leave you. Like, I'll actually talk to you through this, instead of just kind of checking out and being like, oh, I'm good. I'll ignore my fears until I, suddenly freak out and have, a panic attack about something, So yeah, just like learning how to be brave and not have ceilings on myself, with different things. I kind of forgot where I was going with all of that, but yeah, that's kind of a little bit of like my recent journey.
That's amazing. It sounds like by you going after this one area of life, it's benefited you in a lot of other areas in your life. A rising tide brings up all ships, or whatever that saying is. But like, I think when we advance, when we move forward, when we have breakthrough in one area of life, it opens the door for a bunch of other areas to also that we can transfer that breakthrough to, for lack of a better word. So do you have any tips, any thoughts on kind of returning to our childhood and finding, remembering who we are, remembering, what brought us joy, and what any like one-liners or something you have on that? Your wisdom.
I don't know if there's ever anything that's with me that's a one-liner, because you know how much I talk. But anyways, everybody knows that. But I would say, for me, like obviously allowing your heart to come alive. Like if you want your heart to come alive, and connect with your childhood, there's really no way to do that without acknowledging some things that maybe have hurt you and have, like you cannot shut down your heart to just pain and only, and then just only have joy. Like it's both, and you have to have both. But what's crazy is that we think that if we turn on, that if we allow ourselves to feel pain, we're just going to drown in it and we're never going to be happy. And it's just going to be so hard all the time. And that's not true, because I've gone after some really gnarly things, and we're not obviously going, into depth with all of that stuff in my story, but I've definitely got a story. And, if I can turn my heart back on, and allow myself to feel pain, then I would just encourage anybody out there, like you can do it too. And actually you'll be surprised at how much you're able to feel joy again by allowing yourself to feel pain. It's almost like the two sides of the same coin. Like the depth of the pain that you're willing to let yourself feel. Honestly, I feel like sometimes it's equal to the depth of joy that you're able to feel. So I feel like I've been able to like grow in how much I'm able to be and how much capacity I have for joy because of the capacity that I've built for pain, like simultaneously. So yeah, I would say, like trust your heart and trust that your heart is, that it's not gonna like just like leave you in this like really horrible place of all of your pain, like trust your own heart to like let yourself actually, give yourself permission to go there with things that have been painful and let your heart tell you it hurts, and you don't have to do everything in one day, just like, bits at a time. and then you're going to see like the results of that, like how much like other parts of your heart just, it's like a domino effect. They just start to wake up and become alive. So there's that. And then I'd say, one part of me that, like I think with connecting with your childhood is imagination. Like when I think about being childlike, it's like the first thing that pops in my head is being like having an imagination. And as adults, we just try to turn that off. We think, well, like, oh, your imagination is like, that's for kids, or like that, what good could come from that? I'm like, well, yeah, if you're imagining horrible things happening all the time and a bunch of fear, then sure. Like maybe the imagination doesn't sound so great. But when I started actually allowing my imagination to come alive, I connected with so much of my childhood and being able to, see pictures and just really like have, visions in my head and, be creative with things, when it came to even like writing books or actually even like doing art or things like that, where it was like all of this comes through my imagination and actually, connecting to even my own heart, closing my eyes and actually imagining, what does my heart look like? What does my heart need right now? What do I need right now? I can imagine myself in a field, just laying, in a bunch of flowers and just having the sun, on my face, even though I'm sitting in an office and it's freezing and don't want to be there, So I think, letting your imagination come alive is like a huge part of connecting to your childhood. That takes trust again, though, like with your heart, of just like trust yourself, trust that what you're seeing is not stupid, that it's not irrelevant, like your heart will show you things that you need to see or experience or things like that just through connecting, to your imagination. That has been huge for me. Yeah.
Brilliant. You said writing, and you've written, published at least one book, and you're in the process of writing a couple more. Can you just real quick tell them about your book and where they can find it?
Yeah, so I did write a book. It's called Redeeming the Pain, Keys to Inner Healing and Freedom. You can get it on Amazon in paper, and it's an ebook. You can also get the ebook version through, is it iBooks? Yeah. So, yeah, you can get it through those two places.
Do it.
Yeah.
Buy it.
Yeah, so it's really good. It's just, about what I've learned, obviously, in my journey of healing. And yeah, there's some exercises and like activations and stuff in the back of it to kind of like guide you through some things specifically. So I genuinely actually go back to those things sometimes for myself. So I feel like I wrote the book for me because I'm like, oh, I forgot how to do this. What was it that I did again? And then I'll, use my own book. So
that's how you know it's good art, when you make it for yourself. You use it for yourself. You're talking kind of in general about building trust with your heart and kind of just connecting with your heart, just talking to your heart. Love to hear more on that. What did it look like? What does it look like to build trust with your heart, to learn how to speak the language of your heart, as kooky as that can sound?
Yeah. Oh man, I feel like that's a whole can of worms.
That's a really large can of worms.
Yeah, it is. Like, how much time do I have? So
6 minutes.
Okay. So then that answers one of my questions for you. Like, how do I go about this? Okay. Well, there's something that I've learned to do, which is called heart sync. So I can, just tell other people out there, like, go look that up and look into it. Krista Black wrote a book called Heart Made Whole, and she talks about heart sync in one of the chapters. I think it's like chapter 7 or something. She also talks about it on one of her podcasts. So go look that up. But it talks about the different parts of your heart and, connecting them. It's not like being schizophrenic or anything like that. Like, you have different parts. But, different people have different names for the different parts of you. Like, like in psychology and stuff. Like, it's funny how it'll kind of like correlate to different like theories, about people and the different parts of you. But that's one way that I've like really learned to like connect with my heart and see my heart. So there's your guardian heart, your emotional heart, and your function heart. Each of them has a different kind of role, and that's kind of why you can feel 3 different ways, you know, or multiple different ways at one time, you know. I can be like, well, part of me feels like this, but part of me feels like this. So heart sync is really great for connecting those different parts of your heart together, you know, because sometimes the different parts of you that feel different ways can be a little bit at war with each other. So that's one thing. I know I didn't go very much into that. So, but if people are curious, you know, maybe it's good that I kind of give you a cliffhanger.
We'll talk about it in a future episode.
Yeah. Other than that, I would say that like one way of building trust with my heart is actually learning to trust my innocence. Weirdly enough. So like a lot of times when people have, you know, something that they've done or like something that they've, you know, struggled with or whatever it is, their first assumption is like, you know, who would do that? Like, oh, that's so horrible. And they judge themselves. Not realizing that like behind every single thing that someone has done that's horrible, like, you know, or even the good things that people have done, like there's a reason why, you know, and for the things that are not good, that it's pain, you know, pain is what drives people to do things, you know, pain and not getting your needs met. And so, you know, in my journey of, you know, connecting with my heart, a lot of times my first knee-jerk reaction was to really judge myself and to be like, you know, you did this because of, you know, ... And my conclusions were so harsh. Like, you're a terrible person. You just wanted to hurt this person, you know, when it was like, that was so far from the truth, you know? And when I started learning to have compassion on myself and actually go, what was the innocence? Like follow the trail of breadcrumbs back to the innocence and actually validate that like this very simple thing could lead to something over here that sounded really drastic, you know, of like, oh, you know, my struggle with suicide, you know, and being able to trace that back to, it wasn't just because I was some creeper weirdo who just fantasized about killing themselves because they're just inherently evil and that I just had something wrong with me. It wasn't because of that, you know, being able to trust like, oh, actually my heart is inherently good. Like I didn't come out of the womb as like this, like, you know, horrible person who just had these like evil motives and just wanted to do, you know, bad things. It was like, no, stuff happened to you. And I know that you don't want to believe that this really simple moment is actually what led to these things, but you need to actually validate like, yes, like that really is the reason, and not make it overly complicated, you know? Like actually trust my heart that it's like, no, actually this is exactly where this started. Because I think sometimes when we do like things that are drastic, you know, like, oh, I want to kill myself. We think that like, oh, well, something really bad must have happened. Like it had to have been this moment when like somebody like, you know, I don't know, like a parent, you know, completely beat the pulp out of me or something like that, you know, to where I would think that I'm not worthy enough to be on this planet. It has to be something that drastic. And a lot of times it's not. It's like the really simple things, you know, the really small moments, you know, where you believe a lie, you know, in a moment of pain as a kid. And then and then it snowballs from there. So yeah, a lot of learning trust with my heart is actually trusting what it tells me is the reason why something hurts, and actually validating that and being like, oh, okay. And, you know, and in that, it's like validating my innocence and tracing it back to like, where was the innocence before things happened? Who was I actually at first before all this junk happened to me? You know? Yeah. So in doing that, yeah, I feel like my heart, you know, started to trust me more, you know, with showing me more things. And, you know, I actually kind of fell in love with my own heart again because I could see my innocence instead of seeing all of the things and just being like, oh, well, you did this just because of this. It's like, no, wow. Like you're an amazing person and these really hard things happened and that's what led you here, you know? So yeah.
Yeah. It's good. We'll have to do another episode talking about that. We can go into more detail, but for now, you people, you enjoy that. So I'm gonna start wrapping up, but maybe we can throw out a couple of like takeaways. So you're talking about going after what makes you come fully alive, and so guys, even if your thing, that the thing you do or whatever that makes you feel alive isn't being in nature, because that might not be for everyone, there are some things that will do the same for you. So really encourage you to kind of start to get curious and chase that down and figure out who you were as a child and what did you like, what gave you a lot of joy, and try to find the thing. Because I forget who said it, but there's a quote, the world needs more people who have come fully alive. I forgot part of it.
Yeah.
You probably know it.
I don't know.
Dang it. Google it.
I was waiting for you to do the Dolly Parton one that's like, I know who you are, do it on purpose. But yeah,
say it again. Dolly Parton.
Dolly Parton, yeah. Find out who you are and do it on purpose.
Do you have anything else to add?
Yeah. Like if you like finding out what makes you come alive, like a hang up for me was like, time and money, are always kind of those things that come into, the picture with anything that you are kind of going after. Whether it's like, I want, to get emotional health. Well, it's going to take you time and it's going to take you money to like, go to a counselor, things like that. But with, being outdoors, like I struggle with that. Like, I'm spending money on this. Like maybe I should be wise and spending it on something else, and kind of feeling guilty. And one day I came home and my roommate said, she's like, what's wrong? And I was like, well, I'm just like, I don't know. I'm like kind of like stressed because I feel like I just, I spent money on this. And then like I left my paddle at the lake and I had to get a new one, and, like this and, blah, blah, blah. And I was just thinking through all the things I'd spent money on. And she was like, why are you like, like beating yourself up about this? Like, that's what makes you come alive though. And I was like, oh yeah, like this is actually worth the investment. Actually, this is not pointless. Actually, this is something that makes me come alive. And that is a good enough reason, because for people who are like more like type A or, I don't know, who can get, everybody can get worried about money. But, when you like start to think like, oh, well, maybe that's not wise. I shouldn't be spending money on that. Like I shouldn't be spending money on fun. Oh, how dare you have fun?
Don't ever have fun, kids. It kills you.
So yeah, like if you are really into photography, like buy the stinking camera.
Hey, man.
And stop kicking yourself about it, telling yourself that you could have put more money in your retirement, or whatever else it is. Like, hey, you know what? You're like, I doubt in 30 years you're going to really be caring that you spent the money on that camera. What if you bought that camera and you start taking pictures and realizing like, wow, this is amazing. I'm really good at this. Not only do I really come alive, but then, I don't know, you become a famous photographer and like, I don't know, money is not an issue anymore because you actually bought the camera.
Tips for becoming a famous photographer.
Yes. But whatever it is, I don't care. I mean, if you like puzzles, like, if you were like, as a kid, you came alive collecting stamps, like just do it.
Weird ones.
Go after it, There you go.
Yes. Well, now we know how to become a famous photographer. Where can people find you, either website or social media?
Well, I have a website. Don't judge me about it. It needs help. It's pretty plain. I did it myself, so don't judge me. It's called MaryRuthNeal.com.
Spell that.
MaryRuthNeal.com. So yeah, that's my website. I have a public account on Instagram. It's I want to say it's like Mary-Ruth _Neal. I'm like 90% sure that's it. You know, there's not a lot of Mary-Ruths out there, so you'll probably find it. So, yeah, that's where people can find me. And I post a lot of stuff about my adventures, so, you know, you can be inspired if that's what you want to do.
Lots of mountains and lakes, ladies and gentlemen. All right. This has concluded today's session. Class dismissed. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks for listening to the podcast today. I would love if you would leave me a review on Apple Podcasts or your favorite podcasting platform, as it really does help the show out. You can find me on Instagram at Japheth Mast, that's spelled JAPHETHMAST, or my website, japhethmast.com. Have an amazing week, and don't forget, make life awesome.